Hi, thank you all for being here at the 8th Annual Ovale Winter Warmer. Thank you for listening all around the world, and thank you to these incredible poets we have reading this last session tonight, Rachael Hegarty, John McCullough, and Chris Mansell. I'm a poet joining you from the marsh coast of Beaufort, South Carolina, in case anyone's wondering where the festival stage has just landed them momentarily. So welcome, and it's a privilege to be at this festival with you all, this place of sanctuary. I'm going to introduce each poet just before their reading. So first we have the pleasure of hearing Rachael Hegarty, whose first collection, Flight Paths Over Finglas, won the 2018 Shine Strong Award. Her collection, Mayday 1974, has won national and critical acclaim. Rachel's kids say she uses the 3 F words too much: Finglas, feminism, and feckin poetry. So welcome, Rachael. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Hello, everybody out there in the poetry world, quite literally in the world. I'm here with an English poet, an Australian poet, and an American poet. So it's a great delight to be here. Many thanks to Paul and all the gang down in Ovale. So I'll kick off. I'm from the north side of Dublin, and we're all sending love out from the north side of Dublin to everybody out there. So this is the song map. Late at night, we hear folks sing of women. A wheelia, wheelia, wheelia. Of men behind bars gone mad with the jingle, jangle of an L triangle. Da belts out his dream of Joe Hill. Ma keens over the foggy dew. We learn the song map of our small island via the landmarks of mangled hearts. In town, on Raglan Road, out the country, down by the Sally Gardens. Lovely buckety words, ferile jigs and lonesome airs haunt our heads. We are lulled, fall asleep, top and tail siblings in rickety bunk beds. So I'm one of 9 children. So in a 3-bedroom house on the north side of Dublin, in a neighbourhood called Finglas. So oftentimes people would be sleeping top and tail in the bunk beds, particularly if we had cousins or pals over in the gaff. So Finglas is this great working class neighbourhood, and it's great fun there. I grew up having all sorts of wild adventures, and down by the Irish Travellers Halton site, a place called Dunsink in Finglas South. The Travellers had all sorts of ponies, sky balls and pie balls. And sometimes some bold girls used to go on those ponies, and they used to go bareback riding. So this is for everybody, the family and friends who are in Finglas or far from Finglas and drinking dirty pints of Guinness at this minute. But this is for you. It's hard being away from Finglas, but there's a part of me that is always in Finglas. Bareback riding in Finglas South. There is a knack when you go bareback, riding a stolen pony to stop you feeling lonely. You wait until after dark to begin this solo lark. You take a length of rope, a sweet red apple, and hope that Chestnut Racer stands by the hedge. The council wall becomes your mountain ledge. Like Eve, you put the apple to his mouth. With hemp for ropes, you amble south. By the Talca's river bank, you dig your heels into his flank. A knicker, and you bolt out of the ordinary. Oh, Finglas South. It's been a while since I jumped up on top of a pony, but however, it was a great crack when those things happened. So that's from the first collection, but the second collection is called Mayday 1974. So on the 17th of May, 1974, I went into town with my ma. I was 5.5 years old, and with my little brother Daisy. He would have been around 3, and so he was in the pram, and there was a loud noise, and the bomb went off. And then a few seconds later, there was another loud noise, so loud it hurt my ears, and something sharp went into the back of my legs. And I knew that was bad when my mum dropped her messages, her groceries on the ground, and watched an onion roll across the street, and a man was looking up at the sky, and I knew something's going on, and my ma threw me into the pram and we ran. So we got out of town. We were very lucky, but unfortunately that day became known as the worst day of the Troubles, because by the end of the day there had 4 bombs had gone off and 34 people had died. So that day had an effect on so many families. Hundreds were injured, and a lot of fallout from it. And I went off to study and to learn. When I was in the libraries, I looked up the government papers on the Dublin and Monaghan bombings, and there was only 3 sentences for each victim given. Carla, I think I'm frozen here, love. So the victims only had small things. So I wanted to honour the victims and honour their memories. So what I ended up doing was writing a ballad for the 33, and one nearly full-term baby, unborn baby. Wrote little ballads for them, but also docu-sonnets. So the docu-sonnets were statements from the families, and I put them in a sonnet form, and then the ballads are just from my imagination. So this is part of one for the O'Brien family. So a whole family was killed on Parnell Street. John O'Brien was 24, Anna O'Brien was 22, Jacqueline was 17 months, and Anne-Marie was 5 months. They lived in Gardner Street, and they were originally from Finglas, my hometown. So this is Alice O'Brien's statement to the Oireachtas public hearings on the Barron Report, the 20th of the 1st, 2004. My name is Alice O'Brien. I lost my sister, her husband, and their 2 children in the 1974 bombing on Parnell Street. My sister was 22 years old. Jacqueline was 17 months, and the baby Anne-Marie was just 5 months. They lived around the corner from Parnell Street on Gardner Street. My aunt lived across from Anna. She alerted the house in Finglas that Anna had not come home all night. Paddy Doyle, my father, and my mother's sister, Christine Conway, went to the mortuary. My dad identified Jacqueline and Anne-Marie because they were the only babies. But he could not identify Anna at all. He identified Johnny by a tattoo on his arm that had Anna and Johnny on it. Anna was identified when my Auntie Christine recognised my sister's earring. Ballad for Anna O'Brien. What I miss about Finglas are the trees by the Tolka. The river made the valley, and the valley gave us trees. When the priest in Gardner Street drones on, I mouth me prayers like the others, but really I'd be back by the Tolka, walking the trail of trees in me head. I hear me granny's voice, soft whisperings over the rattle of rosaries, and her telling me trees never sin. She names off the trees and their markers. The willow with its weeping limbs, the ash and its papery bark, the oak's sturdy trunk and tiny toppers, and the hazel with its nuts for hungry gaps. When the time comes, I'll show our girls the markers for different kinds of trees. I'll take them to the elder where me and John carved out our names when we was courting. They'll likely laugh at us, owl ones, once young, and carving love on a tree by the Tulka. So there they are, Anna O'Brien and her lovely family. May they rest easy this night in November. In Ireland, we call it Mí na Marbh, Month of the Dead. I suppose 2020, what a year, what a time. So the next poem I'm reading is from this wonderful new anthology called Poems from the Pandemia, and the editor is Patrick Cotter. So there's all sorts of lovely poems in here by amazing poets, but I have one my own in here that is a small offering. The Second Wave. Word came in last night. Unfortunately, we've been advised that a resident who transferred to Beaumont Hospital yesterday has tested positive for COVID-19. I recognise this as a disappointment, as many of you were looking forward to visiting this week. I couldn't read the rest of that email. The screen blurred with tears. Some sound came out of me innards and cracked all over the gaff. Me husband and kids came running. The eldest grabbed me phone and read out loud. The youngest held me hand, and my love held on to me from behind. Family photos gawked out at the state of us. Since then, it has rained non-stop, and the men have taken to the kitchen. Himself is roasting a shoulder of lamb, long, slow hours at a low heat. Just the way me ma likes it. Our sons are baking for Ireland, fairy cakes, brownies, and angel buns. All their nanny's favourites. I get out and garden. I weed and make up a posy of drenched dog roses for her care package. I have to leave it on the doorstep of me ma's still locked down care home. Read that for everybody who's far away from the elders, the youngsters. We're all missing each other. Roll on the vaccination and the hugs and the kisses. So one of the great joys in my life is having kids, and they're teenage kids now, and they're great. They're not that mad into poetry, but they are into rap, and they exist in the place where they think rap has something to do with poetry, and poetry may or may not have something to do with rap. But anyhow, I read this for all the young gang who are surviving, and for all of the young people all over the world, and all people who are involved with the Black Lives Matter movement. 8 minutes and 46 seconds. I fold another wash in from the line and sniff me kids' clothes for traces of damp. I breathe in nothing but the May sunshine and hints of heat from upturned soil and drills. And here, in comes me favourite rapper. But something is wrong. His AirPods are out. His teenage eyes are wide with fright and rage. Ma, look, just look. The small screen captures us. A white cop kneels down in the gutter, kneels into the neck of a handcuffed black man, lying face down on the tarmac road. The arrested man calls out for his mama, and she exits heaven to say his name, to comfort her dying, now murdered son. The pile of folded laundry topples down. We barely have the heart to pick it up. And the last poem I'll read is a love poem because, let's face it, all poems are love poems, and you have to have a little bit of sexiness of a November night. Midsummer's Eve. Midsummer's Eve, and we want to walk grass trails. I long for me ware in a rare Dublin field. Come here till I show you if you know about this place. I guide you to the remnants of our local ring fort. A mound of grass, vetch, fern, sticky backs and clothes buttercups. Oak trees silhouetted in streetlight were hidden and kiss like mad things. Your tongue, our hungry mouths, feel as gorgeous as naked plums. You know what I'm like and you know what I'm after. You lift me up skyward, spin me, make me dizzy. The phone dings us back to real time in Raheny. Our babysitter's on the clock and tomorrow there's school. Home to check on our two sons asleep in the one bed. You load up the dishwasher, I sweep the kitchen floor. A late gloaming, we check the windows and lock the doors. Outside, the garden darkens, grows. We go to bed and we don't sleep. Thanks very much.
Wow, that was just that. So much of that cracked open my heart, and like you said, it's all love poetry. And yeah, thank you for giving voice to those that have been silenced. Our next poet is John McCullough, whose latest book, Reckless Paper Birds, won the 2020 Hawthornden Prize and was shortlisted for the Cost of Poetry Prize. He teaches creative writing at the University of Brighton and New Writing Scouts.
Hi there. Thank you so much for having me. I'm going to read mostly from that most recent book, Reckless Paper Birds, which is a book which really focuses on vulnerability. This is the first poem I'd ever written, I think, with the word soul in, which I'd had an ambiguous relationship with for a number of years, but it's one of my favourite words. And yeah, so I was really pleased to finally get it into a poem. Soulcraft. It's true. There is a light at the center of my body. If I could, I would lift aside a curtain of this flesh and demonstrate. But for now, it is my private neon. It is closest to the air at certain moments, like when buttercups repair a morning's jagged edge. Other times, a flock of days descends, and my soul flickers, goes to ground. Without light, I'm all membrane. Each part becomes a gate. I pour across each margin, and nothing has enough hands to catch me. My teeth knocking so fast, I daren't hold any piece of myself near in case I start a banquet. I'm only eased by accident. On the drenched path, I pick up snails and transport them to safer earth, then feel a stirring. I watch as rain streams from lopped back elms, my face teeming with water, and hello, stranger. My soul glides to my surface, like it too belongs there, like a bright fish rising to feed. This next poem is one of a number in the collection that explore mental health. The Zigzag Path. The day connives, and you think you cannot live here, in your body, alone and rushing forward all the time, like a silty river. All you wanted was to find a home beside the souls of white roses and hurt no one. But the light keeps shifting. An invisible broom keeps flicking you out from cover. You roll up at each destination with a different face, as wrong as the beech tree in Preston Park hung with trainers, a museum of tongues. The day connives, but this dirt is proof of trying. The chalk path you never longed for zigzags through cowslips no one asked to throng. In the park, a robin has built its nest inside a Reebok, the shoe's throat packed with moss, and a crooked whisper of grass that says, I can, I can, I can. I have with me here a little counterfeit coin, which is what really sparked the next poem. Some of my poems explore queer identity, and I've always had an attachment to that counterfeit coin, and I really often, my poems, they emerge through an investigation of something, a weird feeling that I have, a weird attachment or connection to a particular object, and that's certainly the case here. Queer coal. You tumbled into my palm in a trickle of sterling. Bad coin, foul queen, though I didn't notice. I pocketed you, conveyed you like your sedan chair, respectfully slotted you into vending machines that coughed you out. You winked at me from a change tray, and abruptly I spotted everything about you was wrong. Your weight, your ill-defined milled edge, your obverse skewed. Not copper, zinc, nickel, but lead sprayed with gold paint. Too shiny. Queer coal, they used to say, meaning counterfeit or base money. What ends up improperly beside your person, tilting the system, forcing each wall, mutilating the weather. Fucking queer, a voice in the Watford crowd snarled as my lips brushed Ryan's cheek. There I was, my mouth mimicking legit. My hoodie, cap, trackies like a man's, but on close inspection, awry. My voice too light, edges blurred, flickery. I carry this awareness in my blood. How simply I'm revealed as undermining the currency, warping the ceiling. Now coin, I keep you squirreled in my wallet's secret section. You are my talisman. Return me to what I am. No pink pound, but queer coal, rebel head, wonky origin, dangerous minting. This next poem's one of the pieces that gives the book its title. It explores origami. There's a bit of mild filth at the end, not major filth, but just so that you are warned. I am rather obsessed with birds, as you may guess from the title. One here as well. All made by my other half, who's very good at origami. Flock of paper birds. I needed the God of my childhood to be useful, so I folded him, shaped his pages into wings. Cranes at first, then more challenging roosters, swallows, owls. I pinched edges, split clauses to make word plumage. I fractured Leviticus with pleats. Now toucans mount doves on the kitchen counter, near an unholy pile of geese, cloacas gaping, beaks jabbing everywhere. Birds plummet from shelves without bothering to flap, remember nothing. Ink blurs, feathers yellow. They drown in baths, rip luridly, turn up mangled in the hallway, footprints across their necks. Mostly they're individuals, smoothly indifferent to each other's fates, though now and then some prop up neighbours if they topple. And when I lie with a visitor beneath my quilt, incubating his glorious buttocks, the flock discover their throats and sing together while I guide my tongue along warm creases, and the tight sheet of his body unfolds. The next poem I'm going to read is a more recent poem, beautiful poem in the last set about 2020. And what's been so unusual for me was I've been working on a manuscript about anxiety, and both personal and cultural anxiety. And so when the pandemic hit, it was so strange that so many of my friends were suddenly experiencing severe anxiety for the first time. And I wanted to write something about that really widespread sense of dread and worry. And the radiance is visiting again, a bloom of shimmering plankton at low tide, blue souls that lift the shore to space. Conditions must be perfect for them to glow, the darkness total. They must be far from home, completely lost, exiled by currents, then panicked by the foamy smack of breakers. This is no bounty for them. It's horror, this brilliance that quivers, arcs. Picture it now, so you'll remember the image one lonely midnight when your heart assaults your ribs. The galactic light of tiny selves that never wanted anything like this, but together finished up terrified, magnificent, brightly living the only way they know. I wanted to end on a more upbeat note myself, so I'm going to read two poems, my last two poems, both love poems, and this first one was inspired by a teapot that managed to track down. Always been a big fan. This features one of my favourite colours in it. Spout. Some months all my thoughts are one colour. I hit a yellow mood and the world pours out its yolks. Tall stacks of National Geographic in Oxfam. Cranes that point uncertain fingers at the sky while maple leaves swoop into me and cling. Their veins like roads heading everywhere in fallen saffron cities. Then the teapot you saw on eBay had to have. It was like unpacking October and standing it on our table. Its yellow logic, strict yet plump, offering an outsized handle, a colour that might foster never-ending cups. We filled it with boiling water, our new sun, and that first time the copper rings around its centre made it tick, 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 as if letting us know it could wipe us out if it wanted to, but we'd been spared, that we could live beside it, that should be grateful for everything of its kind which travelled toward us. All the yellow days. My last poem is another love poem. This one's set where I live, on the south coast of England in a place called Brighton. So I'm by the sea, and each autumn I often go shopping for stationery as an academic, and this very manic, anxious love poem is very much set at that time. Stationery. September is going all out to ease us in. The clouded sky is a whiteboard for helpful diagrams. The first cool air as welcome as your hand inside my jeans. Autumn zips round with its orange highlighter, and you provide nifty shocks and marshmallows, leaving pornographic post-its that ask me to rendezvous please for hot chocolate. I am the type of man who likes unnecessary displays of manners, who appreciates thank you cards, warning signs, forests of regretful notices for building works. I admire rows of ginkgos that lose all their foliage in one drop to form a yellow brick road. I am a desperate lion today, stalking scarecrow. I chew biros, glimpse at my watch too often. I was so afraid of being late to see you once. I turned up 6 days early. Love is horrific like that. First it's a rabbit, then a duck, then it's a ravenous one-eyed sock puppet. But the rest is yogurt adverts, and you fasten my thoughts with the most beautiful paper clips, even the filthy ones, like the time I saw a grove of ripening chili plants become a rainbow of penis trees. Do you wish to continue? Says the voice of a self-service checkout. Yes, yes I do. Between the shops, the sea snuggles under its blue leaves. The clock tower waits patiently for Christmas, a familiar figure below it waggling his arms to lure me over. Succeeding. Your skillful face punches a giant hole in the day, and I jump through it. Thank you.
Wow, that's some very powerful vulnerability. So many striking lines. A museum of tongues, crooked whisper of grass, and I just have to repeat this because it's so fantastic. A rainbow of penis trees. Yeah. Wow. Thank you so much, John. Our next wonderful poet this evening is Chris Mansell, who decided she'd be a poet at 14 and has been writing and racking up awards since. She won the Queensland's Premier Award for Poetry, the Amelia Chapbook Award, and the Dorothy Porter tongue twister, the Dorothy Porter Poetry Prize. Her latest book is 101 Quads.
Hello, lovely to be here. This is said book, 101 Quads, and I'm going to read you some. They're a bit weird looking, so I'll show you what they look like so you understand what I'm talking about. You see how they're all stepped down like that? Every poem in the book is like that. They all are exactly 480 characters, no punctuation. So they're quite a strict form, but of course all art is limitation. And so it enables you great freedoms. So this one, I have an orange tree at the back. It's very, very fecund and beautiful. It's just an orange tree. An ecstasy of oranges picked from the tree, fulfilled in theft, the flesh-eater, steely, quivering fruit. It longs to be taken, to be plucked, devoured, whole, spat forth. Many seeds fallen on the stony ground, the others wait. Pick me, their desire a silent orange. Their roundness rests sullenly, beautifully against the sunlight that suckled them. Pick me. Eat my juices, suck me again, taste my flesh, give me the sweet savoured agony of my wishes. Eat, oh my saviour, drink, eat, save me. And they're like that, they're so luscious and lovely. But you can see that the poems seem longer than 480 characters, but that's the way it is. This next poem I'll read is set in Sydney Harbour. We've got the Opera House on one side, the Museum of Contemporary Art on the other, Harbour Bridge and stuff. And there's a ferry wharf that comes in, and the ferries come in, and there's a sort of thing that they can bang into if they get out of control, which they have on occasion. And of course, there's sharks in the harbour. Afternoon ferry hips a wharf, goes feral in the light, a wondrous jam of metal and wood, old as, churns, chokes and stops breathing. Diesel dam dreams, spilt port side, sharks blister, hopeful as angels, sharp-eyed for fallen fruit. Oh, artful death, you are a sudden dancer, so accurate, blithe and wily. You hide in the sunshine, scoop the skin of days before the armistice of age. It is the quiet territory of shame and being mortal which drives us to desire. The shark nudges the ferry. Hope jags, exits starboard. So this book has launched this year. In other words, I might as well have thrown it in the river because nothing has been launched, though it will be launched next year. And we're just going to pretend that 2020 didn't happen. I'll read you another quote. This one's quote 21. And it's... I taught writing for a long time, and I stopped teaching writing when I started quietly thinking to myself, look, can you just shut up and Google it and, sit down and write and stop asking me questions? I didn't really think that was the optimum attitude to take into teaching writing, so I stopped. So this is some advice which leads into reality. Do not have the idea beforehand. Do not strain through the prefrontal cortex. Do not think on it. Work it out. Ratiocinate. Definitely do no ponder. Do no drowning in thought. Do no hardest thinks. Concentrated, soft. Best ideas climbing on you like randy monkeys, pulling your hair, stealing your mind and coffee, then rat-assing away. Thought you might catch them in the act. They shit on you, great art, etc. And even if you did get the monkey, it has eaten all the poems again. So you can see why I probably should have stopped writing. There is another book coming out this year called Foxline, and foxes are beautiful animals, and we have a very difficult relationship with them in Australia because they're not Indigenous and they tend to eat our kind marsupials and our livestock. And of course, they too are immigrants. As I've only been here my family's only been here 5 generations, and I live in a land where people and their ancestors have been here 60,000 years uninterrupted and uninvaded until 1788. So you can see there's a sort of ambiguity about where you live and what you are. So the fox is a difficult creature, but this fox reminded me, of course, of the famous fox in Ted Hughes's poem. But this fox is a bit wily. It's called Dark Solo. He's not so long a cub, but now he's solo, thin as thought. This unripe foxman has to scarper into dead men's poems. An image of stealth and quick, illusory ink. The foxman's glum. Last week he was a cub, but now cast out. He can't recall if he's distraught or bravely longing for his freedom. In any case, food short and danger great, and any open skull will have to do. He doesn't leave, but stays amid the crevasses, then finds a juicy sulcus to recline in. It's snug and entertaining in a poet's mind, much better than TV, though more murderous and full of lies and fears and angels. What the weary foxman sees from this poet's eye is strangely strung. Heartbeats in stones, fates in trees, songs along the roads, graves, wine, disorder, all in voices not his own. A manic, calm disfigurement. The foxman thinks, where is the blood? Where is the hunting? Of course, we tend to think of Teju as being very visceral, but I don't think he went out and personally beat his prey and ate them live. So from the fox's point of view, we're incredibly over-civilized. Just to change it a little bit, talking about poets, though, I'll read you quote 30, which is me being a bit nasty. Not nasty, just a bit provocative, I suppose, about some people. I actually know somebody who stayed up really late so that they can listen to the Nobel Prize announcements in case it was them. Perhaps not. Perhaps I didn't know that at all. He is worried about posterity, though posterity, the poster girl of laughs, is knitting warmth and thinking not at all about him. She is picking rabbits out of her dark, copious hair, disposing kingdoms, making, unmaking, fabulous, filing the grins of sharks without success, smug bastards. Meanwhile, poets stay up late, wanting it to be them. Please, please be ennobled. Alas, posterity looks the other way, does not see. She's long-sighted after all. But some nights she cannot sleep for all the poets weeping. Ah, dear. Honestly, I've written quite a bit about war. Excuse me. I've written quite a bit about war, and I want to read you a poem called "When the War." Well, none of them have titles actually, but it begins "When the War Ends," and we long for peace, but I'm not sure it's in our nature really. I'm not sure if we gave it up that would really be what we are. When the war ends, the knot cut, the day unravelled, we will not be human. The barbarians at the gate will ditch tents. Their children will be born ragged, uneducated, bereft of fear. No one will let them in. They will ask and will be denied. And peace will settle as quiet as snow and chill us to our bones. Soon hills are borders and streams paths, and the war will stop. And we will not scheme, strive, rive, cheat. Darling words will fall. Bombs rot in silos. Calm peace settled. And we will not be human. So I mean, that sounds pretty like I'm endorsing war, but of course I'm not. It's highly problematic. I don't need to tell anybody that. But of course, our whole system's based on going and bombing somebody. I read this poem called "The War Becomes." It's out of an anthology called "To End All Wars," an Australian anthology of anti-war poems. The general becomes, do what I say and you will be free. Do what I say exactly and you will be free. Love me and you will be free. Love me and only me. This way and you will be free. Vote this way and you will be free. Spend this way, incur and repay debt this way, and you will be free. You, in the deserts, you will be free. Follow my lead freely, and you will be free. Hate these, fight these, and you will be free. Work this way, at this time, in this place, in this manner, without complaint, and you will be free. Kill these and you will be free. Wear this and you will be free. Suffer and believe and you will be free. Think this way, vote this way, criticize this way and you will be free. Spend and dream this way and you will be free. Rebel and wear your hair this way and you will be free. Lie down on your own accord and you will be free. Give up all thought of justice and you will. You will. You will. I promise you, be free. In Australia, as I said, we live in on a continent, an island that has had this very ancient history. And we're not exactly come to terms with it. There were wars, but we don't acknowledge them as wars. We're getting a bit better at acknowledging wars. So this, and it's a problem if you don't acknowledge wars, you can't accept them. If you don't acknowledge the past, you can't move on. Some wars are silent. There are no bridges. The songs of the missing have long died. The country mimes its history. The eucalypts, the water, the mountains stand alone. There is no afternoon where flesh comes together, where the stories of the many thousand years comes, where the clapstick sings out. Here, history is silent and the wars are not acknowledged. We're deprived of heroes, fools, and lessons. Our history settles on the grass like an old man sitting down. Some wars are silent, and there are no bridges. But this is changing. This is actually changing as people literally rewrite history, put in the things that were missing. Just to change up a little bit, I think I still have time. I'll read you The Secret Life of Birds. This is from my selected, which just came out a while ago. There's a few things. Magpies in Australia and all different countries are actually different birds entirely. Magpies in Australia are very friendly and very vocal and can imitate, and also as a hobby are well known for picking the skulls of people as they walk past the nest, particularly small children and angry people. And a mariang is just an Aboriginal word for a magpie. Everyone envies those birds, their ordinary liberation, with their sure beaks and their clean feathers, their this eye, other eye, clarity, their here now, gone now, transience we adore. We love those birds. They thrill a minute, nearly hit, nearly miss, ungrounded, sharp-footed, sure otherness, their views of our roofs. Corvidae in the Macca's car park are snipping the pickled gherkins out of old hamburgers with a disapproving clack of their black baker-like beaks. Their serious eyes thresh out the good intentions from bad. The crow people love themselves to bits. You can tell it from their walk, their bustle bums, feather black. They chuck the wrappers round the car park with their sharp crow eye, catch the interloper, want to know, what are ya? The magpies address the lawn, snip up strings of earth-coloured, earth-contained, earth-eating worms hide in the dark from their thorough beaks, picking them out for punishment. The shore mariang set off excited dogs, fair heads, skull-scabbed children, and scared grown-ups armed with umbrellas and a stock of fear, kept for this very purpose, to keep the vast terror focused on the one thing, black and white as history. The self-contained superlative sparrow with its spring-loaded legs, sprongs from chair to crumb, overwound and edgy as a stockbroker. Cheap, cheap bargain profit, manically calculates margins with its cocaine eye, picks pocket, find the next new thing, sparrow knows itself unique. Is driven mad by the dun and beige suit. This morning, I met the silent bird beating against the inside of my skull, the bird of imagination, the flightless adventurer, the secret lyrebird, the one trapped, the one that can't get out, the one crying, freedom, sky. I think maybe I have time for one more, in which case I will read you Alexandrine's, also from the selected. Alexandria, Egypt, we know, place of great history. It's got a big long corniche that runs along the Mediterranean there. And the traffic just fangs down there. I went to Kafafi's place. He lived there for many years. And here we are, a poem called Alexandrines, written in Alexandrines. On Kafafi's landing, her language bounces like firm rubber balls down a flight of stairs. Directions, instructions, who can tell? Alexandria, where the wind comes off the Mediterranean, down Al-Nabi Daniel, down Salah, Istanbul. Kafafi, to your old place off the Sharia Sharm el-Sheikh. The radical commerce where the intimacy clings onto you like a dull salesman, like the world grabs some poets and sucks all the sense out of them, and sometimes they miss their lives because of it. Life flaps on while they're having heart attacks in coffee shops, pausing over Turkish with cardamom and sugar. The city of life, but everyone has loved Alexandria to death, built their monuments and catacombs. Success is usury, till someone is so in your debt, you call them friend. Kafafi hid here in plain sight his Ithaca, and the many armies that have loved her cram the air with mercantile filth. There was little space for poetry or madness. In your room, Kafafi, I sit and smoke some old cigarettes with new friends, coughing, old fags we joke, and talk poems and Ithacas. I catch yellow Alexandrian taxi back from Kafafi's, and the driver says to me, "Dangerous eyes. You have dangerous eyes." Dangerous eyes, he says, capitalizes and elaborates again. He says it, and in the end, I have to agree. He keeps on looking into my eyes while fanging down the corniche. The traffic is wild. My eyes are getting more and more dangerous as we speak. The longer he looks into them, yes, they are. I say, oh yes, what is your work? He wants to know. What do I do among the terror and the mendacity? Sit in the dark, I say. Tell the truth. Yes, he says, you must. This is Alexandria, and drives past the library, big and blue. Thank you for listening. It's been lovely.
Thank you so much, Chris. There's just very haunting, mesmerizing imagery. I feel like I've been seduced by your work. Like, if I love your poetry, will I be free? I think so. That was a fantastic poem. So I just want to ask you all some questions, because I'm sure, like myself, the audience is curious and eager to know more about you and your writing. So I just want to ask a few questions. What advice do you have for someone wanting to write and publish poetry? Oh, okay. Yeah. You want me to? Okay, I'll point at you. John, do you want to go first?
Okay. Well, the number one tip would probably be to read, because this isn't just poets saying that you should read books to keep us all, in the clover and pay our bills. Reading lots of modern poetry will fill your brain with strategies and tools to solve problems that come up during the compositional and editing processes. If you only read stuff from hundreds of years ago, then you're going to end up sounding slightly antiquated. So my biggest tip would be to do lots of reading. But I guess beyond that, one of the big things that I found helpful is to create a community of poet friends locally who support me and give me feedback, and who I support in turn. For me, poetry is really communal. It's all about making friends with other poets, cheering them on, supporting them, and it just makes it all a bit less isolating. Writing can be quite a solitary practice, and so I think the more social aspect there is to it, the better.
Yeah, thank you. I totally agree. Yeah, I'm not sure now how to do this because I know so maybe if I call on people, then Paul will know who to unmute. So, Chris, would you like to answer next?
Yeah, sure. I agree. Read. And also criticize, read critically, and don't be ashamed to dislike people that everybody says is great, because sometimes the poems that you dislike teach you most, because you have to look and say, why I like this. And also, oddly, reading stacks of bad poetry, if you've ever taught, writing or judged competitions, because you look at it and you think, this does not work. Why does it not work? And often it's not as easy to answer as one might think. But of course, in that investigation, you think, yeah, I see this. Oh dear, I do that as well. And that's very useful. But I also think at some point, stop going to courses, bum to chair and do the writing.
Yeah, that's interesting. I hadn't thought about that. To think about, like, to really study poems that I don't like, that don't resonate for me. I will try that. I'll try that, because I think maybe I'm too fussy, like a pedigreed dog or something. I'm like, if it's bad poetry, I can't. But I'm gonna try that. Thank you, Rachel.
Thanks to Chris and to John. I would agree with all of those advice. But I would also say, aside from the reading and finding your community and then reading poems that you don't like or challenge you, or the bad poems, so that you learn how to do the good things, I would also say find your mentors, your living mentors. And I think that's a really good way to learn some tricks of the trade. So I've been very lucky to have, like, Paul Meehan, who was instrumental in realizing that, for me, that poetry is something from my hometown and from my neighborhood. It doesn't matter that you're from a working class background in a state, it's still there. Sinead Morrissey as well, who was on earlier this evening, like, she gave me a great sense of discipline, that the whole idea that, you show up every day and you sit at the writing table and you write, and then you have to learn the trick of whittling down, and then keeping going, like, through that isolation and developing your own voice, But there's also, like, as well, like, other wonderful poets, like this. I was thinking about that. Like, one of the great books that I've ever read was Audre Lorde's. And it's not poetry, it's her prose take on poetry. It's called The Master's Tools Will Never Dismantle the Master's House. And that whole idea of, if you're on the margins and on the outside, then go find the other people who are on the margins and on the outside, and see what are they doing, And Adrian Rich's Diving into the Wreck, I felt like that was very helpful for me too. Of that writing any poem is like going underwater and seeing what fucking treasure you're going to come back up with, and it's all an act of faith. So yeah, advice for writers: go diving and hope there's enough magic air in the tank to get you back up to surface. Yeah, learn magic. So, yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I was just writing the names of those books down, and yeah, thank you. The other question, what qualities come through in a poem that make it, like, enter your heart, make it visceral, make you feel that poem, so it leaps off the page for you? John, we start with John again and just go around like we did.
I remember Elizabeth Bishop was asked a similar question. I've got a book of her interviews. I find her very wise. I've always loved her attention to crafting and editing. For her, it was surprise, which I really like as an answer to that very difficult question. In that, I think she said the subject and the language which expresses it should be unexpected, should feel strangely alive, should come at an angle that you weren't suspecting. There should be, you shouldn't be able to predict where the poem's going to go. And so I suppose that for me is, one way in which that sort of emotion can be created, because I absolutely think, every poem needs to have some kind of electrical charge. For me, it's really a bodily thing, I think. The test for me of whether a poem works or not is not a rational, logical thing. It's whether it passes the tingle test, gives me goosebumps. It's all about whether I feel it in my body. I either do or I don't. I judge a lot of poetry competitions as well, and that's the only way that I can do it, is just how does it make me feel afterwards? And sometimes something can be really clever and just do nothing, and sometimes something can be really simple and even have a lack of craft, but I just feel it, and that's a great poem for me.
Is it me now?
Go ahead.
Me? I'll go. But I agree. I bet to me it's language. I mean, you can have a brilliant idea, and if it's not, the language isn't dynamic and interesting and resonating, that is playing off other aspects in the poem, it simply doesn't work. I mean, I think one really good example was your teapot, John, your yellow teapot, where you built up until you had this literally sun, very clever, sun, the teapot there, and suddenly that teapot becomes totally magical and important and vibrating. And you're able to do that by the structure of the poem, not just by saying, as some would do, oh, my teapot is just like the sun. No, it's the whole poem that makes the thing. And of course, you know that because you wrote the poem, obviously. And Rachel also knows this because of her beautiful poems, which I really, really enjoyed earlier. There's something about feeling that the author is being sincere. Your poems, Rachel, were just heartbreaking. I was sitting here like, in a good way, because it's a very different cultural experience from my own, and that honesty came through. But I do like movement. I'm really interested in movement. And by that, I mean where the language leads you one way and makes that surprise that you're talking about, John, where it can tip you on a preposition. I'm very fond of prepositions. It can change where you think the poem is going to go. And, of course, that brings both paths together rather than just having the two separate paths. So it's got to have that richness. Even a simple poem can do that. So language, surprise, as you say, but also authenticity.
Rachel?
I would follow on from that, the surprise, the language, the authenticity, and then I would go into soundings, because my experience of poetry was through song first. I didn't grow up in a house that was full of books. I grew up in a house that had sing-songs. usually after a certain amount of drink was taken, but there was a lot of sing-songs. But people also had their party pieces. And if you couldn't hold a tune, you said a poem. And a lot of these poems were poems that people learned at school, but also just poems that they picked up from songs. So they would speak the song. So for me, when I see soundings there, and also I just love a sassiness, a cheekiness in a poem. I love irreverence in a poem. I'm like, yeah, fucking kick Shakespeare up the arse and see, I'd say he likes it. So I'm always up for a little bit of irreverence in a poem. Yes. So that's what I'm When John said, I like to feel it in me body, I was like, like that. I like to feel it in me knickers, but you're like... And it was like... And but also what you were saying as well, Chris, in terms of the just also calling on traditions, and I was very struck, Chris, by what you were saying about you're living with a 5,000-year-old tradition. So when you look at 1778 or whenever the gang went up to Sydney, and thinking of, you know, other traditions, I think that's a good thing as well to bring that in. So yeah, yes, but both Chris and John had that sassy irreverence. So I reckon you must have a bit of Finglas in you.
Probably. One hopes. I mean, my people come from Tipperary, so, you know, I don't know, maybe, who knows? It's 60,000 years, by the way, 60,000 years.
Oh my God.
Yeah, really heavy duty. You know, you feel like a bit of a blow-in with just 5 generations.
I wanted to ask, because I watched a few sessions before Stanley Knott, the poet, was the MC, and he asked just something very sensitive, and we kind of take for granted this question. So I just really love that he asked this. I'm going to ask you all, how are you doing? You can say in general. Again, we can go around. John, you want to answer first? We'll just go around how we have been.
I'm okay. I'm still alive. I'm very bored, I suppose, not seeing all my friends in person. Not as happy as my cats, who are absolutely loving lockdown. They've engineered it all, I think. They're behind the whole thing. It's a conspiracy. I feel like conspiracy. They've got me at home so their neediness can be satisfied. Like every day, they always get annoyed with me going out and things. So yeah, they're very pleased to have me finally where they wanted me. But yeah, I'm okay. I have my cats and my partner. I should talk about my partner more, but yeah, the cats. I have them. Yes, and poetry, of course. I have many books. I've read lots and lots. It's weird. I've had more time this year to write and read, and I think I was fortunate that I'd already begun working on a manuscript about, as I say, anxiety, cultural anxiety, and whatever. So I was able just to continue writing that, and then yeah, I had the fortune of winning the prize, and it enabled me to order lots of books. So I've spent quite more time reading this poetry this year than any other. I just, yeah, because I've had less work to do, partly. So that's been the muddle that has been my life, the mix.
During this time of COVID, you know, book launches didn't happen and things like that. But here in Australia, we've been very fortunate. And at the moment, things are rather close to normal. They're not exactly normal, but they're rather close to normal. We've opened most of our state borders, you know, so we can go from New South Wales to Victoria or whatever, which was a big trouble. But again, you know, it sounds terrible, but, you know, mostly I stay at home and sit in my study and read books and write poems. So it doesn't didn't impact me in the same way as it impacted, other people who were out in the world mostly. And I feel very privileged for that, but and also sort of, a bit guilty, really. But there's a sort of deeper, as you say, John, cultural anxiety there about, I think that people have actually realised just how fragile it all is. And we had this false impression of great stability and a sort of deep, solid depth. And, I don't know about you, but in Australia, the minute, we were told there was going to be a lockdown very early in March, everybody went out and bought 40,000 packets of toilet paper. I mean, get a grip. It's just ridiculous. So people panicked in the most absurd ways, which suggested to me that they hadn't ever really thought about the nature of the society they were living in the first place, that they could be so freaked out by this. But we've been very fortunate, and I personally have been exceptionally fortunate in that it's hardly impacted my life, except I say, for having 2 books out in a COVID year, that's really a stupid thing to do. But we're just going to superimpose 2020 onto 2021 and just pretend 2020 didn't happen. But, there are worse things in the world for having to delay a book launch, really. There people in real strife and great distress. You hear from people, all over the world, friends saying, "Oh, well, I can't go anywhere," and people are being stupid. And my neighbour just died. So I'm very, I'm very happy myself, and deep in poetry.
Wow. So me, is it? I met old mate from Finglas from my hometown, and I was saying, "So how are you keeping, Johnny?" And he's like, "Oh yeah, living the dream. Global pandemic. It's fucking brilliant." He just got it, yeah. And he's a postman, so he's very, very busy, and he's working hard and delivering big packages for everybody. So he's grafting, So look, I think I've decided that COVID has all sorts of cruelties, and I don't know anybody who doesn't have a COVID cruelty story. Like there are times that I think, Jesus, we're like, I'm all right. I like that. I've got loads of writing done this year, loads of reading done. Don't like teaching on Zoom. I'm teacher, that's me bread and butter, and that's like half as effective and twice as exhausting. So I'm not up for that. And I work with students who are all marginalized in different ways. So I'd be very worried about them. Few of them have got the COVID. In Ireland, we call it the COVID. It has a definite article. So I see it like, and even my neighbourhood back home has had the highest rate in all of Ireland. So that shite of we're all in this together is all me arse. I think, different people have been hit differently, and that's not just a class thing. I think it's a race thing. It's all sorts of intersectionality are operating with the COVID. So I hope we get lessons out of it. I hope that we learned that a little bit to maybe be more mindful of the climate crisis. And I think there is a parallel between the virus and the climate. And I get what you're saying, John, about your cats being happy, but I think the bats had a word with the cats, and hence we got the COVID. I read a story about a dog who was so happy that his tail broke because he was wagging it so much with his owners at home.
Oh wow!
So look, yeah, there are ups and downs. but overall, I'd say like my family are doing all right. Our big worry would be me ma, and I think anybody who has anybody belong to in a care home, that's a shite situation. But she's a warrior, and so as long as she's worrying, I'll be a warrior.
That's great.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. So yes, thank you so much, Rachael Hegarty, John McCullough, Chris Mansell. Thank you so much. You transported us, transcended us out of our living rooms, out of our isolation, and expanded our inner and outer worlds. And we have more of this coming up tomorrow, more poetry Saturday and Sunday. But let's keep this feeling of prosperity and expansion going. So please give generously to Avail. There's a donation jar link at the top of the festival stage. So please give generously, as these poets have given generously to us tonight. That your funding, keeps this festival going next year. Open mics once a month that Avail puts on. So it goes a long way. So thank you. Good night.
Night. Bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Lovely to meet you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.